Welcome, everyone. Slava Ukraini. I want to welcome our listeners to a fifth episode of our Bandura Bloor interview series. Today, we will be speaking with Julian Kytasty, who is the featured artist of our Bandura Bloor concert happening on Friday, June the 12th at the Royal York Road United Church. Julian Kytasty, Julian, was born in Detroit, Michigan, into a family of Ukrainian refugees who came to the United States after World War II. He is a third-generation player of the bandura, who first learned the instrument from his father and grandfather, and from his great-uncle, Hryhory Kytasty, a renowned composer and conductor. In 1980, he moved to New York City to be the music director of the New York Bandura Ensemble and began a career that has taken him all over the world. As a performer, recording artist, composer, teacher, and ensemble leader, he has redefined the possibilities of the bandura. His discography includes tributes to the bandura's deep tradition, innovative ensemble recordings, world music collaborations, a duo with free improvisation master Derek Bailey, electroacoustic projects, and recordings of his own solo instrumental music. He has worked cross-culturally with such artists as Chinese pipa player Wu Man, klezmer revivalist Michael Alpert, and Mongolian master musician Battuvshin. Julian Kytasty has composed music for theater, modern dance, and film, including an award-winning film score for the National Film Board of Canada's feature documentary, My Mother's Village. His work on Yara Arts Group 1970 to 2017 earned 2 New York Innovative Theater Awards for Best Original Score and Best Musical. In 1989 to 1990, Julian Kytasty first toured Ukraine, performing over 100 concerts as a soloist and with the Bandura Ensemble. He has returned many times since, performing all over the country as a solo artist in Yara Arts Group theater projects and in collaborations with Ukrainian artists. In September 2021, President Volodymyr Zelenskyy awarded Julian Kytasty the title Honored Artist of Ukraine in a ceremony in New York City. Most recently, Julian has released his Songs of Truth musical songs re-released through the Smithsonian Folkway recordings and collaborated with the master pipa player Min Xiao-Fen, which resulted in their latest recording, Boundless. So, welcome, Julian. That was a long intro, but thank you so much for joining me today. Just to note, I've known Julian for many years and had a chance to work with him for a few years while I was an instrumentalist at the Canadian Maduras Capella, and also at various workshops and bandura camps over the years. And I just want to mention that Julian used to run a concert series called Bandura Downtown in New York City, at which I actually had a chance to perform once as part of Bandura Quartet, Bandura Beyond Borders. Bandura Downtown was actually partly the inspiration for the creation of Bandura on Bloor here in Toronto. And so I owe it partly to you, Julian, for indirectly instilling in me the idea to start something similar to that concert series here in Toronto, which eventually culminated in Bandura on Bloor. So I think it's a bit symbolic that we have you perform at the fifth Bandura on Bloor concert series concert. So welcome.
Thank you, Orest. Thanks for that bit about Bandura Downtown.
Yeah.
It was really one of my favorite projects that I've done, and we did 40 concerts over 10 years, all different, completely different. And I'm really glad to hear that it's having some resonance with you and through you with Toronto. So that's terrific. Yeah, it's a long intro, but it's all true. I guess I could take some of that stuff out at this point, but
Yes, I mean, I'm not gonna do any kind of a recap here. We usually do some kind of recap on the artist's past for the listener, but I'm gonna save you the trouble here. If any of you, our listeners, want to hear Julian's kind of background story of his family and his upbringing, there are a lot of interesting interviews with him online on YouTube. I think, for example, Julian did an interview with Library of Congress American Folklife
yes,
Center,
yes,
where
yes.
he went a little bit on that. I actually recently listened to that interview, just kind of uh, um, not as a prep. I mean, I know most of your life, anyways. But in any case, just wanted to
No,
give it as an example
not
for
all of it. Not
yeah, yeah,
all of
not
it.
all of it probably. Yeah, there's a lot of always something to learn. Right. Yeah. But in any case, yeah, if anyone wants to kind of hear the background story, I mean, but I do want to start with slightly at the beginning of your Bandura journey, and ask you maybe you could give us a glimpse, because of what it was like starting your career. Is essentially, we could say, the first truly professional solo Bandura player in North America since probably Vasily Yamits tried it out in Hollywood in the
Yeah,
1950s.
yeah.
Um, I was specifically hoping maybe you could give us kind of an idea of the type of work you were doing in New York City in the beginning of the 1980s, in
Yeah.
your, I guess, 20s with the New York School of
Hmm.
Bandura and as a solo artist. Just to mention, actually, the first featured artist we had on Bandura on Bloor, it's her niece, Terenia. She actually recently restarted New York School of Bandura after many years, kind of a hiatus. And so I was maybe hoping, yeah, how did, maybe you could tell us how living kind of in the 1980s in New York City formed you as a Bandurist,
Well,
and what other
yeah.
musicians and artists that you perhaps collaborated with or simply exchanged ideas at the time of the 80s, perhaps some of the early art, perhaps set some of the early artistic kind of foundations in you.
Well, the New York thing in 1980. I mean, I was not quite 22 when I moved there, right? And it was really an accident. The New York School of Bandura was looking for a new musical director because the administrator had had a fight with the old one, and I was desperately looking a way out of for a way out of Detroit suburbia, and um, and a chance to do something besides just go back to go back to I was doing a history degree at the University of Michigan, which I eventually never finished, but by that point it was pretty much I realized I didn't want to do that for my whole life. As interested as I am in history, people call me a singing historian because of like all the commentary. But yeah, and in 1980, I knew not much. I'd picked up some from my dad and at various early Bandura camps, and I'd started. I think yeah, by then I'd started playing with the Capella Banduristi. I had a couple of tours. But uh, and then all of a sudden I'm in New York in January of 1980, and there's a room full of kids with banduras, and the interim director, an older bandurist, just who'd been working, since they got rid of the old one. Uh, he just saw me come through the door and immediately grabbed his music, threw it in a little briefcase, and out the door he went, and we didn't see him again for a long time. And here I've got this room full of kids, right? So yeah, as I say, at the time I knew not much, but I did know one of the pieces that they were practicing, the Zaporizhsky Marsh, which you know real well, and I knew it real well. So I go, oh, dobre, Zaporizhsky Marsh. Let's do that one, and that got me through the first rehearsal. And got the jitters out, and then I had a chance to, prepare a little bit and learn some of the other pieces they were doing, which I'd never heard before during the week. But yeah, the New York School of Bandura was really, it sounds impressive, but basically it was a just a organization of parents running it for other parents and their kids to to make it possible for kids in New York to learn bandura. And we were doing the ensemble rehearsals for the people who could already play some in right downtown on Second Avenue, in above the now famous Veselka restaurant, which was then just the not so famous Veselka newsstand and cafe, and 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 then I'd go every you know almost every night of the week to some other part of the metropolitan area to teach smaller groups, to teach beginner groups in various places, to teach people at home. So it kept me busy, and frankly, I think it was the biggest stroke of luck I ever had in my life. It really did get me to a place that I found really really exciting in New York City, and got me started on doing music. And
You guys also did that recording, right? With
Home
wait, with the
Institute.
school. Yeah, I remember one of the.
Oh, with the school too. Yeah, we did a recording. Yeah, we did a couple of recordings. One with the school ensemble, I think in 1981, and then in 1983, we did in 1984. Actually, we did a recording with the ensemble that I put together later when I was much more confident about what I was doing and writing my own arrangements and putting.
Do you think that ensemble sort of still is kind of a one of a kind? That still was
Uh,
New York's Bandura Ensemble, right? The kind of a one of a kind ensemble when we
well,
speak
there's
about.
well, no, New York Bandura Ensemble was basically an ensemble of the students from the school who could play a little bit, right?
I mean, like more
The one we
repertoire
started
wise.
later, the one we started later that I was just talking about, Homin Stepiev, that group had a name, Homin Stepiev,
Yeah, sorry,
and
I
that
meant I meant home institute,
yeah,
not
yeah,
yeah,
that
not
was
the
much more
school.
interesting. There was by then there was a whole group of uh, of young bandura players who'd gathered around, uh, gathered in New York. Some of them we knew from Emlenton, some of them from the Bandura for early Bandura camps. Some of them moved there from other cities to take up jobs. Uh, so there were all of a sudden there was all this Bandura talent in New York City, and we had a pretty decent core to the school Bandura ensemble, people who'd been playing with the school ensemble for years. So so we put those two things together, and we decided we were going to do a group that followed the principles of the old 1920s early bandura groups, right? Which means it was not huge. It wasn't 40 men a live act, 40 men on stage, exotic instruments, colorful costumes, right? It was a small, a relatively small group. We had, I think, roughly 16 people, four on a vocal part, soprano, alto, tenor, bass. So right there, so in contrast to those early capelli, it was a mixed group, men and women, and
That's
arranging.
exactly what I meant by uniqueness and kind of a one of
Yeah,
a kind
yeah, yeah,
because
yeah. At the time, I mean, I mean, I'm amazed it took that long. I mean, the youth ensembles, of course, in North America, the women have been playing for a long time, and several had gotten really, really good. Like one of my early influences on bandura is Tanya Rebukin from Minnesota, uh, who. Who was just an amazing player and showed up at some of the early camps and workshops, Yeah, but but yeah, the Home Institute was just a thing like that, and it was one of these really unrepeatable things. It was just we were all that age, you know, where you're feeling your oats, you want to do something original that's not been done. So we were almost competing who'd write the most interesting arrangement and. Uh, and everybody was pitching in to the extent that they to the to the limits of their ability, and the other thing we decided to do, imitating the or in honor of the early capelli, is to not go on stage with a conductor. I never conducted the ensemble in concert. We rehearsed a lot. We had these really long rehearsals every Saturday, all day in a dingy upstairs room in the old National Home, and it was just magic. We were doing something exciting. We were doing music that had never been heard before. We were doing arrangements that were different than than any ensemble we had done. We were doing, so it was just a magical moment, and then we recorded that it was a short moment. We had a season of concerts. Then 83, 84, we got the recording material together, recorded, then released the record, toured it a little bit. 85, and that was about as much as people could stand of that kind of pace, and then it started coming apart, right? The ensemble kept going for a while, but after 1985, I wasn't the director anymore, and yeah, but that was it was an amazing time, amazing experience,
But with
and
respect, kind of to your solo career, do you
yeah.
think those kind of people who were at that ensemble, I guess, formed your kind of artistry until? 'Cause I'm also thinking of people like Michael Andretz and Yuri
Mm-hmm.
Fedinsky, who you later on
Yeah.
collaborated
Oh, that
with
was
on
later. That was later. Yeah. But
with maybe
yeah,
you could go into how that kind of work with that ensemble then sort of fused into more of your solo stuff.
yeah.
And who were some of the people that kind of, I guess, maybe forged you in a way, or you forged yourself? I don't know.
Well, my the beginning of my professional solo career was taking the school ensemble back in 1980 to the first concert that I was directing somewhere in Connecticut, and we only had like four pieces and a couple of duets that these two brothers played, and that was it, and I had to put on a 40 minute program, so I had to fill about 20 minutes of it, and
So, like everyone else, you're forced into it.
I was forced into it, yeah, I
Yeah.
was. But yeah, but that was it was like everything else in those years. It was just kind of learning by doing. And but the other thing is, in the 80s, I wasn't yet interfacing very much with the New York music scene because I didn't really feel I had a grasp of my own instrument yet. I didn't really know what I was bringing to it, but I was interested in it, and I was looking around a little bit and starting to something I've always been interested in is new music, new and experimental music, and it's like since high school I was listening to those recordings, and I started going to some concerts like that later in the '80s, and the and at the, and then but at that time the New York school had essentially shut down for a while because the demographic bulge had disappeared, right? The children of the displaced persons, of my parents' generation, were done.
Moved on,
The
right? Like had kids and
Yeah, right,
etc.
exactly.
Right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
The kids that I started teaching in 1980, half of them were married with kids and moving out to the burbs,
Right.
and and there weren't any new ones to take their place, because there was a significant gap until their kids grew up, right? Um, and yeah, so I really all of a sudden, very quickly, I realized that I wasn't making a living anymore. And that's when I went to Canada. I got a teaching job at St. Vlad's College in Roblin, Manitoba, and worked there ultimately 4 years. Um,
Yeah, well, most people forget Julian's actually dual Canadian and U.S.
I am,
citizen.
yes, I
So
am,
it's
and I paid my dues. I
yeah.
paid my dues.
So
Um,
I thought there's something interesting you said there. You kind of felt like in the 80s you weren't really that much of a developed player yet, personally.
no, no,
Um,
I was working on it. I
well,
was
working
working
on it,
on
yeah.
it.
How much? Because I know that you're also playing in the Capella
Hmm.
at that time. The Capella went to Ukraine,
Well, that was
early
later.
'90s, right, or late
The Capella
'80s.
went to early '90s. Yeah,
Yeah.
uh, but
What do you think that period was sort of one of those moments where you really cracked down on and kind of really improved as a player? Because I find that there was a period in also in my kind of life when I was playing in the CBC, probably in about 2010s, where there was some really hard repertoire, and I had to really crack down and learn it. And I feel like it really improved me. And I feel like for you as
um,
well, maybe that was a moment when you kind of really cracked down on how to keep
well,
playing. And
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Partly, yes. Those Ukraine tours were important because we were doing some of the original ensemble compositions by Hnat Kutkevich, written for the Kharkiv style bandura, and we were actually trying to play them, maybe not quite as written, but a reasonable facsimile thereof. So so that really made us listen in a different way. And what I discovered, which was fascinating, is right around that time I went to a concert at a new music festival in New York, the Bang on a Can Festival, and I heard a concert by a group of Japanese koto players who were doing avant-garde music for the koto, original compositions. Some of them scored, some of them partly improvised for koto. And I got their recording, and then later we were listening with Mike Andretz and realized that so much of that ensemble sound was exactly the direction that Kutkevich was following. That there were so many licks, so many techniques, so many textures, especially that overlapped. So that made me look at things in a different way, and you know, and then the really big uh, thing for me, as far as making that transition from those early years in the '80s to what I was doing after that was not so much the Capella tour, although that was important too, but the trio tour we did before with Victor Mishalov and Pavlo Pisarenko. We went in 1989 when it was still the Soviet Union, and did 100 concerts all over Ukraine. Uh, with and we were like the first Ukrainian group from North America that wasn't associated with the North American Ukrainian Communist Party, that performed there without any kind of repertoire censorship or anything like that. Right, this was just the very beginning of that possibility, and that was just an amazing experience, because it was my first time in Ukraine, first time having that experience of playing music in front of an audience night after night after night after night, sometimes 2, 3 times a day, you know, and that is a tremendous learning experience, and it really, your chops get better, and you start finding all these nuances in your playing that you didn't have before.
Did
And
working with those guys kind of elevate you, you find? Because I mean, both of them are in their own way incredible artists,
yeah,
right? Pistarenko, just
well,
incredible singer. Victor also,
yeah,
historical, you might think Bandurist in his own regard. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I mean, it was an amazing trio, and I'm so glad that we had that chance. All three of us in our own way, like you said, were pretty darn good at what we did, and and also in ways that overlapped like enough to make it a trio, but were different enough to make it an interesting program. So those were major experiences for me, and the after coming back from that, right, I went right back out to Roblin, to St. Vlad's. I did 1 year before that in 87, 88, and then 3 years, 90 through 93. Uh, and and then I finally had, I decided at that point that I had my Canadian status. I could go to the universities here and not pay an arm and a leg. So I finally finished a music degree, after doing music for all that time. And I did a degree in theory and composition at Concordia in Montreal. Um, and at the and from that time on, I was really looking much more for um, for new things, to create new music of my own, to uh, engage in new collaborations with artists from the most different kinds
So
of.
Concordia, that was in the 90s or
It was
uh,
in the 90s. I was there
yeah.
in 94, 95. Yeah.
Right. And then so after that you have your the experimental trio. I
Yeah,
guess maybe you
yeah,
could talk, we don't have much time here, but maybe you can
yeah.
go just shortly about those experiences because I know actually I remember the first recording I ever listened of yours was the Paris to Kiev one. And
Yes.
so I guess those
That
maybe
that
somewhat
was,
go together, right? Those two, the
yeah.
experimental and Paris
Well,
to Kiev.
somewhat. They overlapped in time. They were totally different.
Yeah, no, I know they're different, but in both, I think you're collaborating, right? A little bit,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Well, I mean, in Paris to Kiev,
with the
my
less,
my job was to get the ensemble,
yeah.
get the ensemble of players together, and to provide some, since the whole project was built around a vocalist, Alexis Kokhan from Winnipeg.
Hmm.
So my job was to get the ensemble tight and together, and then to create some instrumental pieces, preferably lively, that would break break the thing up. So I wrote like these, in the end, I think seven
But
dance
I know
scenes.
I find that the experimental trio ones, though, um, some of the stuff that's in that recording, which I mean, really out there. Like even now, you listen to it, like
Yeah,
it's even after, yeah, a lot of that type of music is still. It's almost kind of came back into your life now,
yeah, it
right?
has. Well, it was never gone. It was there
Yeah. No, I mean,
since
you
high
had
school.
some periods when
Yeah.
you were recording more kind of traditional music and things like
Yeah,
that, but
I mean, I didn't always work with it.
yeah.
I have a chance to work with it professionally, but the trio came out of conversations with Mike Andretz first of all, and us both knowing Yuri Fedinsky, who at that time was an amazing young player with just all kinds of very interesting and different technique. And we both had this or all three of us had this idea of like, well, let's see what else the Bandura can do, So it was really an experimental trio. We only played our own compositions or or group improvisations. Everything that's on the recording is that. And
How
I
does
think it.
how do you think that compares to sort of the improvisation that I know you've recently done with Volodymyr Voit?
Mm,
Is it the same kind of did you teach him a little bit of the process?
A little bit, a
And
little bit, but he's interested in it anyway, so he
right.
was teaching himself. And man, we had a great session in New York the last time Volodya was there. We got together some of the big players in the downtown music scene, and we had a jam session at my place, right? And Volodya didn't even realize until later who he'd just been playing with. So that was terrific. But but anyway, uh, the experimental Bandura trio was, I think, well, of all of the things I've done, that's one of the ones right at the top of my list of things that I feel will stand up and be important project. And to what you said, that recently I've kind of come back to that kind of style. Again, I never really left it, but I've been since about 20. The trio was only around for a couple of years, and then Yuri went to Ukraine and lived there, and he's still there and doing a very different kind of music now. But so the trio isn't around anymore, but it was there for those couple of years, and the stuff I'm doing now was comes out of the trio work. Yes, it's even at the time I was trying to do solo improvisation, incorporating some of the same ideas and getting more fluent at it. And then by about 2013 or so, I started recording that at home, on a good recorder, recording a lot of those sessions. So that's this project called Nights in Banduristan, there's a CD with that name, but there's also a couple of hundred pieces in the Nights of Banduris from Banduristan project, right? That have been recorded, that are the same decent quality recording that are around. But there's a limit to how much of that stuff you can put out. you know?
How
So
much of your content has been created from sitting and 3 o'clock in the morning in New York City at night
well,
in front of a lamp?
Nights in Banduristan almost entirely.
Yeah, no, I
Right,
know.
like three to 4:30 is about the window, where you can count on a reasonable, level of silence, so I tried to catch it whenever I was serious
Yeah,
about
every time I have to drive to New York City, I remember I'd always pop in that CD and I'd listen to it at like 12 at
Mhm.
night when I'm
Well,
driving.
well, I'm glad to hear that somebody puts it in. Actually, I find those recordings because I have dubs of a lot of the other recordings, and I find those very good cruising music. You know,
Yeah, they're
so
perfect cruising music. Yeah, sometimes the sleep because when you're driving really late, it like puts you in a little bit of a trance.
yeah, you have to watch out for that.
Yeah,
But it's the kind of sort of trancey music
yeah,
that you can listen to it, catch all these details, and kind of fade back from it. Listen closer, catch more details.
yeah.
It's interactive, you know.
Um,
So
so that's interesting to hear. We'll maybe come back to that a little bit later when we talk about kind of your latest work. I wanted to talk a little bit about specifically about kind of Bandura in Ukraine because you're someone who had one of the few people who've been able to kind of visit Ukraine for over like not now I think almost 40 years now, and you've had a chance to talk to various Bandura kind of intellectuals and people who kind of ran the Bandura world during the Soviet times and after the independence. And so someone who's traveled there for so long now, what do you find to be some of the biggest, I guess, maybe positive advancements for you personally that have occurred in Ukraine? Kind of an advancement of the instrument itself, or are there any ways in which you feel like Bandura artistry maybe is not evolving in perhaps the right direction, or the direction that you feel maybe is not
you know,
appropriate for it?
uh,
And just sorry before that, and maybe you can specifically kind of weigh in on the Kharkiv Bandura on how
mhm.
kind of that version of the Bandura has evolved in years, both in Ukraine, and to what extent maybe you've tried to influence that, and how important it is to bring back the Kharkiv Bandura kind of back into the spotlight,
Yeah,
specifically in the homeland.
yeah. Well, that's a terrific question for another book, you know. But the shorter answer is that one of the things that I realized on that first trip to Ukraine, the trio tour, uh, is just how much uh, I was I had inherited a distinct diaspora bandura tradition. And the reason for that, that was different than what they were doing in Ukraine, and nobody really could quite figure out what it was that I was doing that was different, right? But the reason is that the people who brought bandura to North America, Europe, Australia, were the bandura players from the last generation where the Soviet uniformity had not been imposed on the instrument, right? So there were players who I heard and learned from who had come from the Kievska Kapella, before the war, and had come out with the wartime Kapella and the separate story, but there were also players from the Poltava Kapella who played Kharkivsky Bandura and worked with Gutkevich, who came out with the same group at the same time, right? And I learned from both sides of that, and for both those groups. Victor learned from one of Kotkevich's students, one of the few people who actually finished his university course, Hryhory
It's
Kytasty.
Victor Mishala, by the way, for somebody
Yeah,
who
Victor
doesn't
Michal. Yeah, so
realize.
so
Yeah.
he knows that. So he had a more direct thing to, but even um, but there were, and then there were, of course, coming to New York, one of the first things that happened was I met my dad's and Zinovy Shtokalko's old friend Levko Maestrenko. And Levko was not a player, but he was a recording engineer, and he'd helped Shtokalko set up his home recording setup. And all of those Shtokalko basement tapes are what Levko preserved from those recordings. And at that time, that was completely fresh, you know. so
Yeah,
so we had, you
Stockholm
know,
was a Bandura player, also based in New York City, just slightly before you. He's actually a
yeah,
doctor, I think, right?
he was an MD. He was a lot
Yeah,
of things, but he recorded. He did a couple. He did some recording for Myron Surmach, who ran the Ukrainian store in New York. Surmach eventually posthumously put out a recording of his works. Stokolko died unfortunately very young.
yeah. Just for
He
context, people might not know who he is. Yeah, but
Yeah,
yeah, go ahead, go ahead. Sorry.
but he was even talking to really good players from that time, like my dad. You could hear that they were just in awe of what Stokolko could do, and he had learned on an instrument that was essentially a Kharkiv style bandura. Some of those ideas of Khutkevich had spread into Halichina by that time. And in Halichina, they could be developed in the 30s without getting a bullet in the head, like you might in Kharkiv, right? And and Stokolko was like the hot young player there at that time. And even then, he was maybe 23 or something when he met my dad and the rest of the Capella. But he just blew them away. He would play rings around them. And my dad said when he was playing with them on stage, he did play a few concerts with the Capella. It was like there was like this whole other section of an orchestra, you know, right, from just his one bandura. So Stokolko was a huge influence on me, huge, and on the experimental bandura trio. Stokolko also recorded improvisations in what I call chromaticized modes, where it's instead of getting chromatic notes, picking out chromatic notes in between the other strings, you just have one layer of strings. You have all white keys, but you can tune whatever you want on them. All right, so if you want to tune C major scale with a D sharp and an A flat, which is one of the ones Shokoka used, you could do it. And we tried that, of course, with the experimental bandura trio. We learned that scale real well and learned how to work with it. And from that, a lot of my Nights in Banduristan recordings, Nights in Banduristan improvisations came from that source. But then I just started finding different bizarro tunings, and each one of them different, each one of them fresh. So that was yeah. So anyway, but what I started this with was when I went on that trip in '89, I realized that both in terms of repertoire and in terms of technique and in terms of just the aesthetics of sound and all the rest of that. There were things in the diaspora that were preserved in the diaspora from the pre-war Bandura tradition, which open up an immense new field for development and exploration now, you know, and so I'm trying to do my bit, you know.
But in terms of because I mean, at that time there wasn't even any Kharkivska Banduras in Ukraine. I mean,
Right.
so I mean nowadays, in the last 10 years or so, the Lviv factories made some, and
Yeah.
Hrasiment, obviously the Bandura you were playing actually, it's technically
It
made
was made here.
by
The
Professor
one, the one, that- the
Hrasimenko.
one that I'm playing, it's one of the ones I'll be playing in the concert.
Yeah.
Is was made by Hryhory in Lviv in 1990, immediately
Right.
after the trio tour.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because we were talking last concert we had Ostap Stakhiv, and he was saying that that kind of bandura kind of got inspired by a bandura that he brought over from Canada from
Well,
uh,
yeah, there were
um,
that's when they started making their way over there.
yeah, yeah.
But
But I was sort of more interested about maybe your kind of opinion about the way in which Kharkiv Bandura is kind of moving in the last kind of years, because you see these a lot more banduras now being built for Kharkiv. Dmitro Gubyak's now
mm,
bandurist. Western Ukraine is building Kharkiv banduras. There's even when I was in Ukraine in 2018, there would be no Kharkiv players, younger ones playing. And I know you went to Ukraine and you've played Kharkiv bandura with some younger girls being taught by
mm.
I
Oh,
forget the name of
the
the
group, the
teacher.
group in Wien, it's Marina Zalizniak.
Yeah, Marina Zelenskyy, that's right.
Yeah, they're doing great
Where do
stuff.
you see the
Yeah.
future of kind of Kharkiv bandura in Ukraine in the next like 10 years or so?
Well, what I'm seeing is it's happening. Uh, it's unfortunately the what happened in Ukraine in the years since the 30s, of course, is that all that stuff was forgotten. So there's no direct source for it. And what was imposed after World War II was essentially monoculture. You had one type of instrument, minor local variations, Chernihiv, but you had one type of instrument, played one type of way. Again, minor variations from teacher to teacher, but same repertoire, same same programs at the conservatory, same everything, same And if you wanted to make a professional career as a bandura player, you had to play that game. And I think it's like way past time that some diversity comes into that, and it's great to see those groups happening and the instruments being built. Unfortunately, what they're doing is making the instruments based on the idea, of the Chernihiv Bandura, right? It's like they figure it has to be like that. You have to be able to play, pieces, certain pieces as part of your conservatory program. You have to play, so you have to have chromatic notes. You have to play, all this stuff. It has to be big. That's the first thing that I'll notice every time I see the Vinica group play is the instruments are really too big for them. You know, and and the and, and the I think what's being missed right now is an opportunity to start a truly alternative path with it, and that's personally my interest. I'd like to go back to an instrument very much like the one that Kutkevich used with his students, which is not big. It's maybe like, I mean, theirs are, yeah, right about that size, but not too big. You can see how this one sits on me. And this one has, it's a full-sized instrument with a range from low C to high A, same as the Hryhory. And it's about, let's see, about how much narrower, which makes a tremendous difference in terms of ergonomics and everything else. So right now I'm really interested in this idea and working with my friend, an instrument maker, Ken Bloom, in North Carolina. And we're developing, a couple of these prototypes based on the 1929 instruments and trying to see what you can play on them, how you can play on them, how the Khutkevich exercises sit on them, that kind of stuff. I'm getting some fascinating results just using myself as the test group, things which I'd been trying on Kyrgyzstan Bandura and never worked, all of a sudden on these
In
instruments
this
it's worked.
sense, you've always been sort of on the minimalist side of music,
Hmm.
and in this case, it's less is more
Yeah.
with these kind of Harki banduras. Um, because I mean those chromatic Kharkiv banduras
Hmm.
do look a little bit intimidating, at first.
Yes, well, they are.
Yeah,
They're
they're
intimidating.
they're they're
They're
they're quite
big.
yeah, they're quite
They're
intimidating. I mean, I'm sure
expensive.
there's going to be a place for them to play that kind of chromatic classical and
Mhm.
other type of
Yeah,
music,
yeah.
but
Well,
like you said, we do miss out on a lot by doing that,
yeah, yeah.
especially the low tension
But
type of
but I
instruments.
think that some of the really interesting stuff that I hear in Ukraine right now, and I mean, not taking away at all from Marina's Vinica group, which is doing amazing work, and I'm totally impressed by what they've accomplished. Uh, but it just seems like uh, what I'm really interested in seeing is more development of the instrument outside that academic platform, right? And um, I think it could happen. I'm seeing it happen with performers like Anastasia Wojciuk, a good friend of mine who is using she's using an old time Sarasvitska bandura and coming up with really marvelous uh, accompaniments with all kinds of complex rhythms on an instrument that's even simpler than the one I just showed you, you know, and and pairing that with her vocals and things and creating really beautiful songs that are totally original and totally her own, so because they're coming out of what the bandura can do. Hello, I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry, I was muted.
Uh,
So now you mentioning sort of I'm kind of thinking of less is more, because these kind of really complicated Kharkiv instruments. I say complicated, but I mean it's really just another Chernihiv bandura,
yeah,
just in a Kharkiv way. But
right.
they're meant to kind of stand out on their own and play everything by itself. But
Right.
a kind of a more simpler instrument, I think, you probably agree with it, is more kind of suitable for collaboration with other kind of instruments. And so I kind of wanted to diverge this back because, I want to talk a little bit about your kind of recent
My latest work, yeah,
work.
sure.
You've recently just recorded. Maybe you can talk a little bit about your. I know you're talking about. We were talking a little bit before this interview about this recording with Victor Pushkar on Bandura
Yeah,
Road,
yeah.
and then also your your recent recording, like I mentioned, your in your bio with pipa player Min Xiao-Fen, which resulted in your latest recording, Boundless. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that experience. I've listened to your latest recording with her, and it's very
Mhm.
interesting. It's very unique. Nothing like didn't seem like it's something you've done before. I mean,
Yeah, I've
you've
done
done other
other things
concerts with pipa
before.
players, but it's
You
a
know,
unique recording in a
yeah,
sense. So maybe you can
yeah.
talk a little bit about that,
Hmm.
how that's been going in the
Those
last
were,
2 years. Yeah.
yeah, those are, two of my two most recent recordings with duets. You know, one is the most recent one is Boundless with Min Xiao-Fen. I'd worked with pipa players before, so I knew what to expect. Ran into her literally on stage at a festival that our Yara Arts Group was presenting in New York. She happened to be up from Asheville, North Carolina, where she lives now. But talking on before the concert on stage, we found that we had a lot of New York in common. She'd been there in the early '90s, uh, early part of the '90s, and left sometime in the 2000s. I was there from the late 90s after my Canadian experience and that. But in our time there, we played with a lot of the same people, you know, and we liked the same kind of music. We liked this experimental free improvisation music that they played at clubs like Tonic and Knitting Factory. So so we included a couple of pieces on the recording that were an homage to that period. It's there's really not as much of that going on anymore, but and some of the main figures are passing from the scene. But but it was yeah, we played and we liked the result, and since Ken Bloom, who I mentioned earlier, the instrument maker, lives in North Carolina, not far from Asheville, it just made sense for me to combine two projects, you know, and I'd go down to Ken's and then go to Asheville and have a rehearsal. She'd come to Pilot Mountain and have a rehearsal. And in not that long a time, we put together the program that you hear on the recording. So it was a very interesting process, very fast process, really. It was it wasn't stuff we really you know, were terribly, you know, splitting hairs about, you know, and just because ultimately what the recording about is just how incredibly gorgeous those two instruments sound together. You know, they really fill in what the other one is missing. You
No,
know.
definitely, yeah. And if you want to check out Julian's recording, I believe it's on Spotify. It's called Boundless. It's on Spotify and also on YouTube and I think other platforms with again Min Xiao-Fen, and then
Min Xiao-Fen.
and then the recording with sorry, with Victor Pushkar was you said it was on Bandcamp, right? Or
Yeah, there's
yeah.
the other recording that I did recently in November 2024. I recorded 10 tracks with a good friend of mine in Kyiv, sort of in between air raids. And he's an electronics guy, electronics music whiz, and he's really into microtonality. So I'm playing my Hryhory Bandura with all kinds of weird tunings, but not in microtones, you know. And he's playing keyboards with microtonal settings, and I mean, the resulting music world is just out of this world, you know. It's I think you know, for anyone who likes that kind of experimental music, it's absolutely worth checking out. For me, it comes out of the Nights in Banduristan project. You know, a lot of the I mean, I constantly work that way, and a lot of the licks that I was using on Bandura Road come out of those um, private sessions, you could say. But then pairing it with the electronic keyboards, it was just amazing, and I'd be really interested to hear feedback and response if anybody has a chance to go on Bandcamp, look for Bandura Road with me and Victor Viktor Pushkar
Yeah, well, I'll put
Pushkar.
that in the video
Yeah,
description for people if you want to listen
yeah,
to it.
yeah, yeah,
Um, so, Jules, you know, we're gonna probably start wrapping it up
yeah.
soon. Very interesting conversation. Learned a little bit about you actually each time I talked to you. But maybe you could tell us a little bit about what kind of music you're going to be playing on June the 12th
Oh,
in Toronto. So just a reminder for our listeners. So Julian will be performing on Friday, June the 12th at the Royal York Road United Church at 7:30 p.m. at our fifth Bandura on Bloor concert. There'll also be a small pre-warm-up performance by Olha Patelko, who's a bandurist from Toronto. Um, and yeah, so maybe you could tell us a little bit about what you're thinking of playing. Maybe it will be some of your older pieces, newer pieces, etc.
Yeah, well, mostly I wanna play the stuff that I'm playing now, uh, which I have a long-standing interest in early music and discovered the Ukrainian Baroque before a lot of people did. And just how incredibly beautiful it was, and 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 I love some of the simple songs from that time that are just they're just these beautiful, beautiful instrumental vocal miniatures. So I'll do a number of those. Uh, I'll do. I'll certainly do some stuff from the Nights in Banduristan project, and and including some of the more recent stuff, more recent tunings and modes that aren't on that recording, and hopefully using them in interesting and different ways. And so that'll be the biggest part of it, and then also I want to demonstrate the Bloom prototype Kyrgyzstan instrument, and just quickly show some of the things it can do.
Well, that sounds exciting. So there was two different instruments, three different instruments. How many?
I'll have. I'm not sure if I'm going to use three, but I'll use I'll use at least one of the Bloom prototypes. They're pretty similar.
When
I
you
did.
asked me about if I have an extra Bandura stand, I thought you meant like for a non-mech Chernivka, but now you've
Uh-huh.
just
No,
told me something new.
no, no.
So,
Well, yeah,
yeah.
but there's like the other one's is right. The other one's also about this size. Really, the big difference is this one uses the bass tuning that Kotkevich used with his students, which was a F major basis with F to F in the bass. Right, that's what lets him make the instrument smaller, because the first pristvinuk, instead of being a D, is already the G above that, right? So you've got a good chunk of territory to play with, and then to get it sounding, to give it the full low sound, they added just one extra string down here. So right now it's tuned to the C below, to the dominant of the F. But they would retune it as they needed it to, say, the minor tonic D, to D dominant to a G minor scale, that kind of stuff. They'd retune as they retune the instrument. They didn't have effective, they were working on mechanisms at the time, but they didn't actually come up with effective ones. So anyway, but they seem to be working in the direction of something very much like, the bandura that we had in the diaspora, like what Stockelko played, like instruments with basically a single layer of strings, but individual changers to make possible all those really different tunings. So anyway, yeah.
Well, it's great to hear. Going to see some unique Bandura playing. Um, well, I mean, Juliana, it was great talking to you as always. I just want to let everyone know that again, please please come to the show. It's our last kind of concert before the summer break, and then after that, we're gonna announce our. We're actually gonna Bandura Bloor is gonna be switching to kind of like seasonal schedule, because last year we did 2025, and then 2026 kind of first half this year, and I think from the fall to the winter and then spring we're going to go to 2026 27 kind of
Yeah,
season,
yeah,
and
that definitely
announce
fits us. Yeah.
next four concerts. And also I just want to mention that as Russia's mass invasion continues and the war rages on, increasing number of children across Ukraine are experiencing acute trauma due to the unthinkable atrocities they witness and experience daily. Many children are separated from parents serving on the front lines. These wounded spend months in hospitals healing from war-inflicted wounds, while others are killed as they defend the sovereignty of Ukraine. And I just want to let everyone know that our June 12th concert will be fundraising money for Project Sonyashnik, which is a nonprofit organization here in Canada that hosts summer and winter recreational rehabilitation camps in Ukraine for children whose parents are active or fallen members of Ukraine's armed forces. In addition to camping, connecting to nature, fun team building, and leadership training activities, bonding with new friends over campfires, the camps provide essential trauma therapy and mental health support for children impacted by the war. And that therapy and support continues throughout the year in between camps via group and individual counseling. So, like I said, we'll be all the net proceeds from these concerts will go to Project Sonyashnik. So Julian, take it away. Last couple of seconds here. Invite people to the concert. Like I said, Royal York United Church, June 12th. Hope to see you there. Also, I totally forgot to mention this,
What's the
but
start time?
on the day after, Julian's actually going to also do a show in Hamilton at the Holy Spirit Ukrainian Catholic Church at 15 Olga Street in Hamilton, Ontario, 2 p.m. That concert will be just him, and that one's actually just donation only. For those of you who are in kind of the Hamilton, maybe Kitchener, Waterloo, Cambridge, St. Catharines, Bradford, Brantford, that area. If you're listening, come to that show as well on Saturday at 2 p.m. So yeah, Julian, sorry,
Yeah.
but take it away. Invite everyone to the concert,
Just
and
listen. Uh, I have so many dear friends in Toronto. I'd love to see some of you at the concert, and I know I will, and I know I'll see many other wonderful people who are interested in this incredible instrument.
well, thank you. We'll really excited to see you too, and have a good night, good day whenever you're listening to this interview. To our listeners, and as always, Slava Ukraini, Героям
Героям
слава.
слава.